Considering tonight's speaker, Dave Bodaly's broad talents and activities as an artist, genealogist, photographer, historian, and curator, he aptly fulfills the definition of a Renaissance man, the term used for a very clever man who is good at many different things. Born and raised in Port Alberni, Dave's mother is a member of the Snuneymuxw First Nation and from the Johnny family, formerly Laxia of Vancouver Island. Dave later traveled to different parts of the world before coming home to Nanaimo in 1994. In 1999, he further researched his British ancestry on his father's side during a trip to Northampton, England. Presently, in addition to his role as cultural tour guide for Sayshutsun Island and Snuneymuxw Knowledge Keeper, Dave runs a studio and classroom in the Red Barn at Bevan Park and maintains a collaborative operation with a cedar carving shop in another one of Bevan's livestock buildings just a few steps away from the Red Barn. So with that, we welcome Dave Spirit Wolf Bodaly.
Thank you.
Hi, Dave.
Yes, awesome. Welcome. I'm from Snuneymuxw First Nation. Thank you for that kind introduction, Daryl. I guess knowing my older brother in Port Alberni and having a bit of history there too. It's nice to be here. I'm really honored to be part of this. When I was looking for a picture, they say that when you need the picture, you'll never find it, but when you don't need it, you'll be tripping on it. And that's what happened with an old photo I was looking for of my great-grandfather. I have on my mother's side from Snuneymuxw, I carry my great-grandfather's name of Lachea, and that comes from my my maternal grandfather's father. So this is a little bit of a history here, my grandfather in the center here, and my great-grandparents at the top. And so I carry my traditional name from my great-grandfather. When they set up the reservations in Snuneymuxw here in the 1870s, they couldn't pronounce the name Lachea. So they said, you'll be Mr. Johnny. Well, he already had a brother named Johnny, so his brother became Johnny and married over to Seashelt. And then his daughter married back to Snuneymuxw. So there's a strong connection to our family over there. The ancestors of Lachea, my great-grandfather name I carry, I received that through a traditional ceremony in our community hall up on number 4 reserve up in Cedar here in 2005. And I had a couple hundred people in attendance of that. So it was a real honor to carry that name, because I also have a long lineage on my father's side that traces in the English history. So it's just a little spot on here from myself going all the way back. And it goes back to William the Conqueror, as far as I know. But of course, there's many more before him. But the work that I do here, I honor both sides of my history. My maternal grandmother, my mother's mother, her ancestry traces back thousands of years from the royal family of Hawaii. And that's how I'm related to Susan, because of our ancestry. We share the same great-great-grandmother. So it's a real honor to do research for people and help the community in the ways that I have knowledge of doing. I feel sometimes I'm multitasking, sometimes from one gathering to another gathering to put on a different hat. But in our First Nations culture, when we have these skills, it's an honor to be able to bring those skills forward. So one of the first words I'll share with you, when we're thankful to be at a gathering, we bring our hands in front of us and you shake them twice and you say, Haichka. And that in our language means thank you. And so sometimes when people are doing a song or something, instead of clapping our hands and bringing the attention, it's just shaking our hands. We'll show that we appreciate what the work that someone is doing. This evening, I want to talk a little bit about Sayshutsun. Sayshutsun Island is our little island across, there used to be Newcastle Island, but this is the name of Sayshutsun that goes back 10,000 years here in Nanaimo, our village here. Our ancestry comes from the Teitachen, which was now Mount Benson. Our ancestry stories come from there, our creation stories. And Sayshutsun means a place of healing and renewal of our spirit. Our families would travel to that island by canoe and be dropped off there if they had lost a loved one or were sad. And we would walk in a counterclockwise direction around the island to renew our spirit, to come back to our family again with uplifted hearts and an appreciation for what we have. Something very unique on this island is we have white raccoons over there. And the white raccoons is a story that has captivated many people. Even though it's only one of many stories on the island, it's a good story though. But what I wanted to share a little bit before I go into that is the story of the welcome pole. Prior to the pandemic, this is where our gatherings were at. Anytime people came to our gathering, they would come off the ferry. It's a 7-minute ferry ride from Maffield Sutton Park, and we would gather at the Totem Pole here. So I wanted, every time I would get someone to do photos, and this was one of the good ones that I got with 3 of the city councilors in there, and Paul Manley, and some Snuneymuxw members, myself, but a real honor to have this group of people come on a tour for an hour and a half where I could share with them some of the stories and showing our deep connection to the land. So the first story I want to share is the Totem Pole story, the welcome figure we call it, which is just behind these people here. So on the top of it is carved an eagle, and an eagle is called a yahwala in our language. And underneath it is a bear, and a bear is called a spa'ath in our language. And you can't quite see it in the center of the carving there. There's a little fish that he's holding in his arms, the bear is holding, and it's called a skeleton, which means salmon in our language. So the story goes that there was a transformer came here, and he changed the things to the way they are because they weren't always like this. And he was on the Nanaimo River, we call it the Snuneymuxw River, and he seen this bear, the spa'ath, was splashing in the water. And he flew from above and landed in the trees and asked the bear, "Why are you splashing? What is it you're looking for in the waters?" And the bear said, "I have no hooks so I can catch any of the fish, any of the skeleton." And the eagle said, "I'm willing to help you for this one time, which will carry on for generations of your people, of your creature." So he said, "If you put your hands in that appreciative gesture, I'll fly from above you and I'll land on top of you. And when I fly away, I'll leave you with my claws." And so the bear was quick to put his hands up. And after the eagle had come and landed and then flew away, he had noticed he had sharp claws. And if anyone has ever seen an eagle claw and a bear claw, they're both exactly the same. And so that's our story of how the bear got his claws and was able to catch all the fish he wanted after that. So it was important for our people to have these stories of how things got to be the way they are. Because of how things are changing in so many ways, our new way of the norm, the new norm is Zoom meetings, which is a word that wasn't in the dictionary a few years ago until we have now Zoom meetings. But I'm honored to be able to share some of those stories, even if it's virtual, we're still sharing, there's still a message to be received from that. If anyone's ever been to the Sayshutsun Island there, in the south part of it, there's a Gary Oak Grove. And underneath the tree, there's a plant that grows there that's very sacred to our people. I don't know if anyone can raise your hand or think about what that plant might be. A very important plant. Camus. The Camus is a trade commodity to our people because the Coast Salish people here are called the saltwater people. So we eat everything out of the salt water, the crustaceans and whatnot. So we have a very rich diet. So the Camus is very high in starch. And so we would collect these bulbs from the bottom of the Camus flower in the summertime, and we would mash those up and dry them. We'd pack them into either bentwood boxes or baskets, and those would be trade commodities to other villages, to other people further away. Because Camus is used as it makes it into like flour. So when it's crushed up with a mortar and pestle, when we would use it to make Camus bread. High in starch, but a good meal substance for our people though too. And it was known that our people traded this all the way to California. So it's exciting to have some of that knowledge of that. When I learned the story of that from our community, from my elders, I was honored that I would be able to share that with people down the way. Any thoughts or any questions about that so far? I got several different areas, but I have to limit myself of what to share and how much to share because of the time space. Maybe they can put it in a message box or something on the bottom. So I want to share a little bit of my history in Nanaimo here, in the city of Nanaimo here. My family ancestry, my grandmother and my grandfather, it was an arranged marriage, my maternal grandparents. And my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side, he came from up in the north. This is a picture of him, and he lived to 101 years old. And when this man was an arranged marriage, because when they traced his history back, one of his ancestors 300 years before him came from Snuneymuxw. And this was all within our First Nations community, that he would be given to the Snuneymuxw, to the Coast Salish people, in exchange for peace between the Kwakwaka'wakw or the Quag youth and the Coast Salish, that there'd be no more wars. And so it was a peace bond that this man was given to our community. He used to collect a lot of, create a lot of masks, and his father brought some masks down here when he had his potlatch, and those masks were all kept in our family. The one on his left here was one that was in the museum, or in the Eaton's store. It used to be Spencer's before that, and then it was Eaton's, and it was on a display in there. But he said a lot of the non-First Nations people would come and take pictures of it all too many times. So he took it out of there. And he said it would be better that everyone didn't come and take pictures from it. But that's how things were back then. So I was able to gather one photo from the Nanaimo archives quite a few years ago. But I would love to be able to find more, because I'm sure just the regular people had taken photos in the 40s and 50s and whatnot, and they're still out there. So I'm continually searching for those old photos. Here's another one with him, with the man from the Royal BC Museum, G.G. Hayes, came up here and asked that he get a picture with him with his mask on. He wanted his wife to come and take the picture with the raven mask on, but she didn't want to be in the camera. So her daughter, my grandmother's sister, said she would be in the photo. So they took this picture of him. And he was already in his elderly years, in the late 40s. He passed away in 1959, and he was 101 years old.
Another 101-year-old.
Yeah.
Two then. Is
Oh,
it?
you know of another one?
No, the same one, I think.
Same one. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he would live to. My grandfather on the other side, he lived to 98 years old. There's my grandfather there. And he was 98 years old when he passed away. He just went to sleep and didn't wake up. So nice way to go when we have to go at that age.
Now these masks, Dave, where are they curated now?
I'm the curator.
Oh, well, good.
So when I meet the families that are interested, I make sure I get copies of their photos to them. so that I'm not the only one that has photos within our family. These two photos were found in 2015. Someone said they found them and it said Quag Youth Nanaimo. When I seen the first man, I couldn't quite recognize his face when he was sitting down, but I recognized the mask that's beside him and that he's holding. Then when I seen the second picture, I instantly knew that's my great-great-grandfather. I know both of those masks there. I recognized them through the mask and found out that was taken in 1900 when he came here for his son's potlatch. When he had, sorry?
Are there specific songs or dances associated with these masks?
Yes, there are. Very good question. Yes. When my great-grandfather had his naming potlatch in 1900, he was already 38 years old, or sorry, 42 years old, because he was born in 1858. Sorry, was it that sound right? No, he'd be 32 years old. So,
No, 42.
42, okay.
42, yeah.
Okay, so he had his potlatch here, and it went on for 1 month. And when he had his potlatch, one of the songs he sang at his potlatch lasted for 6 days, and it was called the 6-Day Song. That was the last time it was ever sung in my family. And now I'm the one that carries this knowledge, and I pass it on to the families and to friends and distant family that are interested in learning about the history of these families. When I was saying that the city of Nanaimo shut down for the day, I'd heard that when he died, to recognize that this man, because of his stature of who he was. The Harmac Mill had only opened a year before, but they closed down for the day from lunchtime on also to recognize that this man died. So it was a real honor to have those stories that come from this man. I'm a direct descendant of him. And to share the names that I carry with all the families, and to show his picture again with his wife. His wife came from Penelaked Island, formerly called Cooper Island. And this was the only photo of her wearing that mask, that raven mask. And in 1929, the picture was taken with the two of them together, and it ended up on the National Geographic map of the Indians of North America. And they had drawn the picture from the original and put it on her. So she was one of 28 people recognized around North America through National Geographic. But again, a real honor to carry this name of these names of these families. And that lady's mother was where Susan and I connect up together, because that was my great-great-grandmother. My great-great-grandmother's name was Phonetics, and her mother was half Hawaiian, came from the royal family of Hawaii. And we were talking with a friend in Hawaii, and they have it traced back 5,000 years before that. So it's really exciting. So. Is there any thoughts or questions of how I'm talking or what I'm talking about?
Well, you said your great-great-grandfather came from up north.
Yes.
Where was up north?
Yeah, that's my grandmother's father.
Father, yeah, up north. Where was up north?
Up north, it was called a place called Village Island. There's no longer anyone that lives on that island, but it's straight east of Port McNeill, past another little island, and there's Village Island is there. But his wife, my great-great-grandmother, she came from a place called Rivers Inlet, the River of Copper. And it was called the Wannock River, and her last name was Wannock. Her name was Tlakladas, and her father was Chief Tlakladas from the Wannock River, the River of Copper. So I do some weaving. I have some artwork here that I do weaving of copper, and that's my connection to the copper. After that, I've been searching with more family members. I had one of my family members up north track some history, and he brought back some pictures for me. So this one here, so my great-great-grandmother, this is her grandfather in the center of the photo by the totem pole here. The man here. And so this is my fourth great-grandfather. And the camera was invented in 1839, and well, in 1845, someone had came to Chilcote, Alaska, and taken his picture of this man with all of his regalia, with all his coppers and his connection to the community. So these are available if anyone does, like Daryl came and seen my shop here where I'm at now. And I'm always open to share with people about the work that I'm doing here. Part of the work here is I teach the children in care in the First Nations children in care how to weave cedar. This is an example of what the cedar headbands is, or the cedar bracelets that we make. I also have examples of cedar rope that we make, and that's something else that's very sacred in our community. And now I'm working with a man on Gabriel Island named Mitch Mayagawa, and he's put together a work with his work and my work coming up in May. So it's called MajiEvents.com, and that's where he could be reached. And it's really exciting to now network outside the First Nations and to be able to bring people in from different cultures and whatnot and teach them. So is there any final questions or any thoughts about what I've shared? Because I want to make sure I have answered any questions that people might have.
What was the connection with Mount Benson?
What's the connection?
Mount Benson, did you have a Mount Benson story?
Te Tachen is the name of it. Te Tachen means the creation story of that mountain prior to the ever European. If anyone knows the history of Nanaimo, of how the name Nanaimo came and how they got the name, it was Snuneymuxw was already 10,000 people here when Captain Vancouver came and met our people along the shores. We were already used to greeting people from interaction with other nations and whatnot. So we rushed out on our canoes to greet this man that's coming in this tall ship. And he said, "What place is this?" Snuneymuxw. Oh, Nanaimo, he interpreted it as. That's how the word came about. But the creation story is something that's more sacred to us, is the creation story from this Te Tachen mountain here, Mount Benson. So, okay. Yeah.
You mentioned that you had a lot of connections to other nations up and down the coast. When your grandparents married, did the man tend to move to the woman's side, or did the woman move to the man's nation, tribe?
Good question. Good question. This is now something that we're looking at as where the people, how they migrated to different ones. When my great grandfather was gifted to the Coast Salish, and his wife, my great grandmother, she came from Penelakut Island, and they were both given land in Snuneymuxw, 13 acres of land. And that's where my grandmother comes in. She's the fourth of 10 children they had. The youngest child passed away in 2008, and she was 96 years old. And from the youngest to the eldest with the 10 children, there was 26 years difference in their age.
Wow.
And when she had already been with a man from the Songhees down in the Victoria area, he had come up here to ask for her hand in marriage. And because he came from a high family in the Songhees area, it wasn't right for my great grandfather to just give away his eldest daughter. So he made that man wait out in the fields behind the house for 2 weeks while he made his decision. So we can imagine if anyone could ever imagine doing something like that nowadays. But that's how strong the commitment was when these marriages happened, knowing that their role is to help the future generations and put work together, similar to what I'm doing. I'm putting the work together for the future generations. We don't inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our grandchildren. And that's what I have a strong belief of. So, any other thoughts or comments?
I'm just curious, Dave, because you mentioned that of the Hawaiian women here. I know Hawaiian men is well documented, from the early 1900s or 1800s onwards. But I wasn't aware there were a lot of Hawaiian women here too.
Yes.
Not many, just a few.
Susan, a few good information on that.
Yeah, there's less women than most of the Hawaiians married Indigenous women.
Yeah, they did.
Because, but there was a few women, like our relatives,
So
that
true.
came separately,
Okay.
But the child at that first marriage would be half Hawaiian.
That's right. Yes. And that was married to my great-great-grandfather. His name was Jack Lachia. And they called him Jack Lachia, which is the English pronunciation of Lachia. Yeah, and that was Princess Angelina, her name.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays,
really
nearly all Hawaiian have some Japanese ancestry, but I guess at this time that would have predated that.
I've heard that too. Yes, it predated that.
Yeah, predated that, and there's a whole influx after.
That's right.
Sort of the middle of the 19th century.
Yeah.
But of course, everything's difficult to trace because they change their names here, right? Like they change their names and their spelling. Yeah. Over and over, like it drives you crazy if you do your history.
The Coast Salish people here were called ambilineal. So we'll follow the male or the female line, or sometimes both lines. And on mine, it is all through my mother's side, my matrilineal, but because her father was important, my grandfather and his ancestors, all of them were important in their lives. But because I come from that direct line, I carry that name of Lachia. One more picture I wanted to share with you with the area of Nanaimo. So this is looking down on our #1 reserve here. And on the far side here, just past this house here, is Needham Street coming down, and up on the hill would be Nickel Street going out of town. Needham Street came down to Shoreline Drive, and then from this Shoreline Drive, the first 5 houses, including this boathouse, they all belong to my great-grandfather, Lachia. And so when I have that connection, the family told me, you come from that high of lineage that this man had 5 longhouses. And someone said it may have been for each of his children, but very interesting to have that. So if anyone's in the Nanaimo area and has chance to come and see, I'm all set up here. We've do lots of tours in my shop here, and I also do teach the classes mostly to the children in care. And we have it set up with the X's all the way around. The board on the back behind me here has our 6-week program that I offer to several different agencies, and it's going very well with that. But my other work now is on Gabriola Island. Now that I got my vaccination done last weekend, tomorrow I'm going to Gabriola to do the one and only gathering that isn't virtual. Because all the gatherings through the Isle of the Arts are done virtually this year, except for mine, and mine are walking at the petroglyphs. All the tours have since sold out within a few hours of becoming available. They were all sold. So I have 3 tours going on tomorrow. So it's going to be a busy day. So,
okay.
But I'm honored to share with you guys some of the stories and some of the knowledge of where I come from, a bit of my history and whatnot. And I always say, in memory of Snuneymuxw and recognition of Snuneymuxw, Haichka, thank you. And please remember that these are Snuneymuxw stories that I share. As a cultural tour guide, as the ambassador for Sayshutsun Island, I'm honored to be the one to share with the people that I sometimes don't meet or I will not meet again. But the world becomes smaller and smaller as we see people. We start seeing them in person again too. So thank you. I'm honored to have shared.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, or closing?
I just want to know a couple more things about the plants on Newcastle Island, if you don't mind, David.
Sayshutsun, yes.
Yes. Anyhow, the Camus flour, have you prepared that and cooked with it or baked with it yourself?
Yeah, we baked them in what we call a pit roast, where we'll put them in the ground and put hot rocks under them. And I've cooked it with Nancy Turner. I don't know if anyone knows, she's on Protection Island right in town here.
know her
I
husband,
worked
yeah.
with the Songhees many years ago, and we did the pit roast and we cooked them, and we got to eat them to taste what the Camus tastes like. Very starchy, a little bit like a potato, high in starch. Yeah. So.
As good as a potato?
Well, I wouldn't say it's good. The potato's kind of, but it's
More
very
flavor.
unique. Knowing that it's an ancestral food that my ancestors survived on or traded with for thousands of years, it's a real honor. So.
Drawing on your Hawaiian connection, be like taro.
Yeah, I like taro, yeah.
Yeah, it was very starchy.
Turner, is it?
Any
Parker?
other thoughts or comments or questions?
Just one more for me.
Okay.
Back in Port Alberni, Klahauya meant welcome, didn't it?
That's right. It does. Yeah.
Okay.
That's in the Newchalness people.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
The
That's going to be my
Nootka
next
people,
question.
used to be called.
Also in
I
Chinook.
went to Mount Klitza High School, middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, had an important meaning to the West Coast people. I have a lot of connections to the families out there too. My great grandmother from here, her sister married out to the West Coast, and all the Watts family are her descendants. So, so big family connection.
You mentioned the tours. How do you find out when the tours are taking place, and how do you get a reservation for the tours?
Okay, good question. Good question. NewcastleIsland.ca or Sayshutsunisland.ca. And here's the spelling for Sayshutsun if you need to see the spelling of that. I don't know, is it backwards or is it?
No,
Nope.
no.
No, on me it's backwards. Yeah. So Sayshutsun.ca is our website. And you can go and look under culture under there, and there's a tab that you follow through. And then there's a number you can call. And our ferry will start running May 1st this year. And we have a new administration for our ferry service. And that's all owned and operated by Snuneymuxw First Nation. So my actual employers are Petroglyph Development Group, which is the financial arm of Snuneymuxw First Nation. And so we have all sorts of other industries, including the logging, there's a cannabis thing, there's a gas station, there's a lot of different things going on within Nanaimo. And it's a real honor to be part of a larger group of events going on. But any of the tours that I do outside of Sayshutsun are all on my own. And I coordinate some of that through my shop here.
So where is your shop?
Oh, I'm at 2300 Bowen Road. The red barn is behind the Cliff McNabb Center, right at Bowen Park. Anyone who's come over here for their vaccination, you go right past it when you come into Bevan Park here. Because of the COVID, they couldn't have a VIX last year, and they did a virtual one, and it looks like they're going to do a virtual one again. So they said I can keep my shop here, and we're going to integrate that into a partial VIX virtual thing. So we're glad to be here, and it's unfortunate that we can't be in person, but we have restrictions from the city, and we are following those restrictions. So.
Yeah, and you got Bo is carving a canoe there, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I'll see if I can turn the
That's
camera
good.
just a little bit more so you can see the canoe. There's a canoe that's 19 feet long in the center of the room here, and that's the canoe that Bo's grandfather and Bo had carved. Like it was about 2 months before his grandfather had passed away. And it's interesting because Bo's grandfather is my cousin. And Bo's not that much difference from me, but yet his grandfather's great grandmother was Snuneymuxw, which connects to the same line that we come from.
I didn't know.
Really exciting to have those connections. So the teachings that Bo has, there are very few people in the First Nations that have those old teachings of how to carve a canoe. One of them, he carved it right in the forest where the log was felled, which is very unique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in
I'm
the next building, right?
That's right. Yeah, the big
next
barn.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah.
Hey, David. Yeah, with mixing, or I guess the immigration or whatever you want to call it, the languages. the early people that lived here then speak different dialects? If if people came from the north or the south or whatever, how did that work? How did the language kind of evolve and mix, and then or did your people just know different languages from different groups?
It's a very good question. Linguistics is a very, very deep topic. I had a lot of linguistics teachers, professors from Simon Fraser University, and I was honored to sit with them when I first moved home here in 1994. She said the best way to learn is you put the tongue on the back of your front teeth and then blow out and feel the sounds on the side of your mouth. It's that sound that comes from deep within your throat. Is a lot of glottal words that we speak. Snuneymuxw, it's either real XW on the end. Lachea is my traditional name. So a lot of real deep sounds in our language. And until 1994, 95, it was only a spoken language. And I was able to sit on that committee and coordinate meetings with the elders where we transferred it into an international phonetics alphabet. So it's come a long ways in a short few years. So.
Yeah, and what area though covered?
That's just
how large an area spoke. How large an area spoke that language on the coast?
Oh, we've spoke that language for 10,000 years.
No, I mean I'm talking geographically.
Okay, so that language that we worked on was from Nanus or Snuneymuxw to Staminis, where Oyster Bay is along the highway, and that's that window of our area that we all work together. The Snuneymuxw Reserve, the ancestors of there came from Nanaimo. Same as Qualicum Reserve, their connections, direct lineage to Nanaimo. But the Qualicum up to Comox, then it changes to the Kwakwak people, so it's a different language. South of Chemanis to Penelaked to Cowichan, they have a different dialect again. It's the Cowichan tribes dialect. And right down to the Lekwungen people at Songhees. It's a very unique breakup of Vancouver Island because we're three different peoples on the island, but we know where our boundaries were and we've never crossed those. We've married through to both sides, but we know where our area is, the Coast Salish people.
But would the early tribes have understood the dialects of the other areas?
It was unwritten. They knew. They were taught by their ancestors, which we say, I'm the seventh generation. My ancestors prayed that the seventh generation would do great and wonderful things. And I believe I am doing some of those as my ancestors. So my job now is to, again, pray for the seventh generation past me. So our language has to be carried forward. It's our connection to the land. It's our heartbeat within our community, and it's very important. So I'm working the hardest I can to try and pick up more of it. So.
Thank you.
Good. Any other thoughts or comments before we call it a day? Good. It's been a good honor again. If anyone wants to see more or hear more, I've got a huge wealth of knowledge. Thank you for Daryl for sharing that, because there's 3 reserves on Vancouver Island now have their own archives that I created with their elders with the BC Treaty process. In 1997 until 2001, I worked with the BC Treaty process, creating these archives for these reserves and a huge amount of photographs for them too. So, and Susan's seen the amount of work that I've got at the shop here and came by and learned about the veterans at my house that I used to write a veterans newsletter, the Aboriginal veterans newsletter. Exciting things.
Okay.
Good.
Dave,
Well, thank you.
would you like to give thanks to our speaker then?
Yeah, and you got your envelope.
Yeah, thank you. Pass it by. We continue. We always say, pass that virtual envelope by.
Yeah, here it comes. It's coming to your left.
Yeah, there it
Can you
is.
reach for it? Here it comes.
The other way. Thank you.
There we go.
Awesome.
Okay.
Good to have humor even in this time of pandemic. And we're all putting out our thoughts that good things are coming. It'll pass behind us before long.
Indeed. Let's look forward to that.
Good. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you again. So
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
Errol's got my number too. Okay,
Oh, I'm
thank
sure
you.
he does. Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at our next meeting on May the 13th. And for the board, we'll see you at the end of the month.